Welcome back to the program Love Unveiled, the Resilient Relationships Revolution. I'm your host, Waqas Malik, a forgiveness coach, and today we are honored to have Jon-Paul, an Army veteran, speaker, high performance coach, and lifelong learner. Join us once more. Together, we explore how anxiety and overthinking can affect your relationships and discuss practical solutions for building loving, stress free connections. So, how do anxiety and overthinking influence the quality of our relationships, and what strategies can we employ to mitigate their effects?
Well, Waqas Malik, first, thank you very much for having me again. It's so wonderful to be with you. Um, I so enjoy these get togethers, and it's an honor for me to support you and talk to your audience. So, you always ask fantastic questions. So, how do anxiety and overthinking influence the quality of our relationships? Well, I know that social and familial expectations are often very, very important in Pakistan. They're of supreme importance. I'll tell you, the same is true in many families and social circles in America, too. We're not that different from each other. So, when there is fear of not meeting these expectations, often that can really trigger anxiety because we're not living up to someone else's expectations. And if that happens, and say a member of your listening audience has that experience, I would say a beginning strategy could be to recognize that the anxiety caused by overthinking could be masking deeper fears, potentially of inadequacy or not being good enough, and that can stem from societal and familiar pressures. Anxiety may also be a sign of unresolved trauma from the past, because it's how our body tells us it feels threatened. Anxiety is a sign that we feel threatened in some way. It feels like there's danger nearby. We may not clearly know what it is. It may not be real. It could be just imagined. But our body, our nervous system's number one job is to keep us safe. And so it uses anxiety to tell us there's something in the environment that feels unsafe. And you won't know until you start exploring it together. And there are some specific things each partner must be mindful of if they take this journey. This is not an ordinary conversation, at least at first. For example, creating a safe space where there's quiet and calm is an important ingredient, especially when the levels of anxiety are very high and they feel unmanageable. Making eye to eye contact is another important quality. Sitting across from each other, touching each other, making sure that there's a sense of safety. And most especially, this was effective for me in my healing journey. Slowing down, way down, is another tactic, because when there's anxiety, our nervous system is working overtime to protect us. It takes a lot of trust to do this between each partner. So if trust is a challenge between you, then it's best to see someone who is trained in body-based trauma treatments like EMDR or somatic experiencing or integrated family systems. I'm a big supporter of the right combination of therapy or counseling and coaching too. Counseling, as you know, looks backwards to find the root cause of a problem like anxiety and then works to resolve it. Coaching, on the other hand, and I know that you're very well aware of this, is forward looking. And it helps people develop the habits and skills not learned through a counselor to set themselves up for greater success in the future. In my view, these are culturally accepted avenues of approach to explore these fears, given the importance of the family in both of our cultures. Addressing life's challenges that we're aware of through this combination of counseling and coaching can lead to personal growth and improved mental well being.
Right. So, is chronic pain, irritability, and insomnia affecting your relationships? While issues such as addiction, eating disorders, and low esteem create hurdles in maintaining a strong connection.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. You know, in Pakistan and in the United States, there's a lot of stigma surrounding mental health, and it can be significant, especially when you're dealing with trauma, for example. There's a lot of stigma around that. But it's important to start recognizing addiction for what it really is and really start breaking down the barriers, the obstacles to understanding it. And when we do that, we'll change the way we respond to it in ways that create more healing and growth opportunities. I know that in Pakistan, there may be cultural stigmas surrounding mental health, and sometimes it can be significant depending on the issues. But that kind of mindset, which also exists here in the West, doesn't do anything to resolve these kinds of life challenges. In fact, it does more damage than good. Sometimes the pain we carry becomes unbearable to manage. Addiction is a way to mask that pain and find temporary relief from it. And whether we do that with alcohol, drugs, overworking, or any of myriad other forms of addiction, people do self destructive things to self medicate and find temporary relief. Believe me, the self destructive activity associated with that addiction is far less overwhelming to the individual than the wound that they're carrying. Any kind of relief, even if it's temporary, provides some kind of soothing to the person that's affected. So I always encourage individuals who are struggling with chronic pain or irritability, and certainly sleep issues that may lead to addictions that mask that pain that's hiding underneath the surface, to seek professional help while emphasizing the confidentiality and privacy offered by therapists and counselors. Those are the people that are trained to help in those situations. And I highly, highly recommend that over trying to manage it yourself. Having a support system within the family and the community can also be a real game changer. I know there are strong emotions connected to addiction: judgment, criticism, shame, regret. But think about this: if you knew that addiction was just a sign of extreme, overwhelming, unmanageable pain underneath the surface, and that addiction existed as a way to find relief from that pain and anxiety, even temporary relief, does judgment really do anything to heal that wound? This, or stigma for that fact. This is where the family can really play an enormous role in the recovery process. It's about meeting our need for love and belonging. We talked about that last week. Someone with an addiction lacked love or belonging in an overwhelming way at one time in his or her life. And that wound hasn't been healed, which is why the addiction appears and may still be there. So, therapy, counseling, and also coaching and support by family are very effective ways to address these issues. It's a sign of strength to seek help. I call it a badge of honor because you're living in integrity if you admit that you're hurting, don't know how to heal the wound, and take the right steps to get the help you need. It's what we do when we get sick or seriously injured, right? We go to the doctor or we go to the hospital. We ought to treat mental health and our mental well-being with exactly the same attitude.
Right. How do emotional challenges such as depression, anger issues, and a fear of death impact your love life? And what can be done to address these issues with your relationship?
Yeah, great question. I'll tell you that in both of our cultures, we place a strong emphasis on family bonds. we do share that in common with each other because we recognize, as I know you do too, and there in Pakistan, that if it's the family where we have our first experience of love and belonging. Last week, again, we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we saw our need to be loved and to belong comes immediately after our basic needs for food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep, and safety. So at the center of love and belonging is trust. When that trust is broken, it can be a traumatic experience, especially if it was broken at the hands of abuse, neglect, or dysfunction. And rebuilding that trust has to be a collaborative effort, and open communication when both parties are ready is essential in that process. So teamwork for long-term health and well-being, personal health and well-being, but also the health and well-being of the relationship is so important, because the responsibility for healing and growth in the relationship cannot only fall to one person in it. It's for both of them to do the work, because both of them attracted it to each other in some way. And both of them are in this relationship. If both are not 100% invested in it, that becomes problematic. So I encourage empathy, understanding, and seeking counseling if necessary to work through the rough spots together. And every couple, every relationship will experience rough spots. But if it's worth keeping, then it's worth asking for help if you need it to preserve it. Give yourself grace along the way. Make a real effort to replace criticism and judgment with empathy and compassion. And be willing to respect levels of tolerance for how far you can take a conversation. Sometimes, and contrary to popular belief, you do not have to solve something in one conversation. Sometimes it takes many, many conversations over a long period of time and hard work to restore trust one step at a time. And sometimes it may help to invite a third party in to help both of you back to recovery and reconnection and respect, such that you can restore the trust. And also remember that traditional values and societal expectations may affect trust issues in Pakistan as well as the United States. That's true. We're really not that different from each other, you know? And I think that's a beautiful thing to remember and celebrate. This is our shared humanity.
Right. In our married life or other committed relationship, can we work on rebuilding trust and improving communication for a stronger bond?
Oh, I believe absolutely. And I think that's an essential ingredient to having a happy, wonderful marriage. I know that, and committed relationship. And I know that that's true for me in my marriage with my wife. We place a high premium on trust and improving our communication all the time. And we notice the stronger bond that that creates. You know, but in a culturally diverse country like Pakistan and the US, relationships may be influenced by different backgrounds and values. That's totally understandable. But guess what? We have a very diverse culture here in North America as well. We call it a melting pot here of different backgrounds and nationalities and cultures and values. And these different groups mix with each other. They interact with each other. Sometimes they get in relationship with each other. And that means people who have different perspectives, different beliefs, different opinions, and different ways of being in relationship get into relationships. But it really still comes down to a few fundamental things that we all share in common, I think. We all want to feel alive each day and have deep, vibrant, meaningful relationships. Awareness of our needs and honoring them is an essential first step, because if we're not honoring our needs, if we're sacrificing our needs for someone else, that provides an imbalance in any relationship. Self-reflection and personal growth is another. I'm a big fan of continuous learning and social learning as a way to find deeper meaning in life and understanding and respecting the cultural aspects that affect relationships. Extended families also play a huge role, as do traditional values in partnerships. They're essential to working together towards building healthy, resilient relationships within these cultural dynamics. I neglected to mention that my family come from the Netherlands. I grew up here in America, but I have a European background. My wife is from South America, from Colombia, South America. So there are differences in cultures between us, but we find that beautiful, and we find opportunity in that to understand each other better, learn from each other, and that forges stronger connections to each other. So being sensitive to this and respecting our differences, I think, is key. Again, less judgment and criticism, and more empathy, compassion, and curiosity is key to healing and growth.
Wonderful. So, what practical steps can be taken to address and overcome a range of relationship challenges, ensuring a healthier and more fulfilling connection with your partner?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. We've talked about several practical steps that we can take here today. Working on a relationship together is the key to creating better relationships, deeper relationships over time. It's what we all want. It fulfills our need for love and belonging. Being a better listener, less judgment, more empathy, compassionate curiosity about each other. One thing we haven't mentioned is forgiveness, but I believe that plays a role in relationships too. So I really honor the work that you're doing there as a forgiveness coach for your community. It's so essential to learn the fundamentals and the health benefits associated with forgiveness. I believe that can play a huge role to finding deeper levels of understanding, rebuilding trust or building up trust, strengthening trust, and certainly respecting each other more. Another is having a spiritual practice or a religious practice that emphasizes the role that love plays in our common humanity, along with forgiveness and compassion toward each other. We have a saying here that the family that prays together stays together. And I believe that's really true. Even when different cultures come together, if they have a sense of a higher power or a higher sense of self, and remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we all have a need to self-actualize, to become the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. When we get into relationship, we have a shared responsibility to support each other on that journey, not only to find love and belonging or esteem, but also to become the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be, and cheer each other on along the way. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I believe that if couples practice these activities, if they practice these things like forgiveness, like compassionate curiosity, it can really serve them in building a stronger relationship with each other.
Wonderful pieces of advices. Thank you for joining us for this insightful discussion with Jon-Paul. Let's continue the journey toward resilient relationships in our next episode, where we confront more relationship challenges. Thank you.
I can't wait.